They laughed at her for being 7, but she fixed the stallion no one could. Emma Johnson watched carefully as Mike banged the wrench against the red stallion's engine for the 5th time in a row. The 7-year-old girl sat in the corner of the Three Brothers Auto Shop in Williamsburg, New York City, clutching her own wrench, a gift from her grandfather the year before. "This darn thing just won't work," Mike shouted, throwing the tool to the ground in frustration. "It's been 3 weeks trying to figure out what's wrong with this stallion. Mrs. Elizabeth is going to sue us if we don't fix it soon." Dave, the other mechanic in the shop, wiped sweat from his forehead and sighed deeply. Both had over 15 years of experience with imported cars, but this Stallion GT was proving to be the biggest challenge of their careers. The car had arrived at the shop with a strange engine issue causing unexplained power loss. "Mr. Mike," Emma said, timidly standing up from her corner, "can I take a look?" The two mechanics stopped what they were doing and stared at the girl as if she'd said the silliest thing in the world. Mike laughed mockingly, shaking his head. "Emma, go back to your corner and stop bothering us. This is grown-up work." "You can't even hold that wrench right," he replied irritably. "But I learned a lot from my grandpa Robert," the girl insisted, clutching the tool to her chest. "He taught me about engines before he passed away last year." Dave joined in with a cruel laugh. "Kid, your grandpa might have been a good mechanic back in the day, but these modern cars are completely different. You should be home playing with dolls, not here in the middle of our mess." Little Emma felt her eyes well up but swallowed her tears. She was at the shop because her mother, Sophia, worked as a cleaner in the building next door and needed somewhere safe to leave her daughter during school break. The shop owners, old friends of Robert, had agreed to watch her for the time being. "I just wanted to help," Emma murmured, returning to her corner where she kept a few mechanic books her grandfather had left her. Mike and Dave went back to work, this time trying a different approach. They hooked up the shop's most advanced diagnostic computer, hoping technology could reveal what their experience couldn't. "The system isn't detecting any errors," Dave said, staring confused at the screen. "According to the machine, there's nothing wrong with this engine." "That's impossible," Mike replied, checking all the connections again. "The car clearly has an issue. Mrs. Elizabeth said it started acting up on a trip upstate." Emma kept watching from her corner, noting every move the mechanics made. She noticed they were only focusing on the electronic parts of the engine, completely ignoring the older mechanical components. Her grandpa Robert always said modern cars had lots of electronics, but the heart of any engine still worked on the same basic principles as decades ago. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now, back to the story. The morning dragged on at the shop. Mike and Dave took apart multiple engine components, checked every wire, tested every sensor, but nothing explained the stallion's strange behavior. The car started up normally, but when pushed to higher RPMs, it simply lost power as if something was blocking the air or fuel flow. Around noon, a tall, well-dressed man arrived at the shop. It was Richard Campbell, the representative from the Stallion dealership in New York City. Mrs. Elizabeth had grown so impatient with the delay in repairs that she decided to send a brand specialist to assess the situation. "Good afternoon," said Richard, eyeing the open engine of the Stallion with a stern expression. "I'm from the official dealership. I came to see what you've been doing with this vehicle." Mike immediately felt intimidated. The presence of an official representative meant the situation was getting serious. If they couldn't solve the problem, they might lose not just the repair money, but also the trust of other clients who owned imported cars. "We've been running every possible test," Mike explained nervously. "We've already checked the injection system, ignition, sensors. Everything's within normal parameters." Richard observed their work for several hours, conducting his own tests with even more sophisticated equipment he'd brought from the dealership. To everyone's surprise, he also couldn't identify the issue. The Stallion's engine kept showing the same unexplained power loss. "I'll have to take the car to the dealership," Richard finally said. "We have more advanced equipment there and specialized technicians who came directly from Italy." Mike and Dave were devastated. Losing that repair meant much more than just money. It was a matter of professional reputation. The news would spread quickly among the area's imported car owners, and they could lose many important clients. Please, give us one more chance, Dave pleaded. We can try other approaches, maybe it's something we're overlooking. Richard checked his watch and sighed. I'll give you 24 more hours. If you haven't fixed it by tomorrow at noon, I'm taking the car, and you'll have to explain to Mrs. Elizabeth why you couldn't do a job she already paid for up front. When Richard left the shop, the atmosphere grew even more tense. Mike began pacing back and forth, visibly nervous. Dave called some mechanic friends from other shops, asking for advice on what could be causing the strange issue. Emma stayed in her corner, but was now flipping through one of her grandfather's books more carefully. It was an old manual on combustion engines, full of detailed diagrams and technical explanations that Robert had used to teach his granddaughter during their weekends together. Grandpa always said that when an engine loses power, it could be a breathing problem, Emma murmured to herself, remembering her conversations with Robert. As the afternoon wore on, Mike and Dave grew increasingly desperate. They replaced parts that were working perfectly, dismantled the exhaust system, checked the fuel tank, but nothing made a difference. The stallion still had the same issue. This makes no sense, Mike said, sinking heavily into an old chair. We've checked everything twice. There's no way this car has a problem when all systems are functioning normally. Maybe it's something we've never seen before, Dave suggested. These Italian cars sometimes have quirks only their technicians know about. Emma closed the book she'd been reading and slowly walked over to where the two mechanics were talking. She'd found an interesting chapter about breathing problems in high-performance engines and wanted to share what she'd learned. Guys, said Emma hesitantly, I read here in my grandfather's book about a problem that... Emma, Mike interrupted sharply. How many times do I have to tell you not to bother us? We're dealing with a serious issue here and don't have time for childish games. But I just wanted... No buts, Dave joined his colleague in scolding her. Go to your corner and stay quiet. If your mum shows up and you're still bothering us, we'll have to talk to her. The girl felt a pang in her chest at being reprimanded like that. She genuinely wanted to help, but the adults couldn't see her as anything more than a meddling child. She returned to her little corner with tears in her eyes, but kept watching the mechanics work and rereading the pages of her grandfather's book. When night fell, Mike and Dave decided to call it a day. They were exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The pressure of solving the problem was even affecting their ability to think clearly. Let's go, said Mike, putting away the tools. We'll try again early tomorrow. Maybe with a fresh mind, we'll spot something we're missing. Sophia came to pick up Emma shortly after. She was tired from a full day of hard work, but always made sure to ask her daughter about her time at the shop. How was your day, sweetheart? Sophia asked, noticing Emma was quieter than usual. The guys have a big problem, Emma said as they walked home. There's a stallion they can't fix, and the dealership owner said if they don't solve it by tomorrow, he'll take the car elsewhere. Sophia knew the mechanics at Three Brothers well. They were hard-working and skilled, but sometimes a bit stubborn and proud. She understood they wouldn't easily take suggestions from a child, even if Emma had learned a lot from Robert. Did you find anything in your grandfather's books that might help? Sophia asked. I think so, Mom, Emma replied with a shy smile. Grandpa wrote some notes about a similar problem he had with an old car. But the guys won't. Listen to me. Sophia stopped walking and knelt in front of her daughter. Emma, sometimes adults get so caught up in their problems that they forget kids can have good ideas too. Don't give up on trying to help, but be patient with them. I'll try again tomorrow, Emma promised, hugging her mother tightly. That night, while Sophia prepared dinner, Emma studied her grandfather's books even more carefully. She found several pages with Robert's handwritten notes about specific issues he'd faced during his career as a mechanic. One note in particular caught her attention. Robert had written about a race car that had a power loss similar to the Stallion's. The problem wasn't related to any electronic components, but rather to a tiny mechanical part that was hidden and rarely checked by mechanics. Mom, Emma called from the table where she was studying. Grandpa wrote here about a crankcase breather filter. What is that? Sophia didn't know much about mechanics, but she remembered some conversations she'd overheard between Robert and other mechanics when they were still married. I think it's a small part that helps the engine breathe properly, honey. Why do you ask? Because Grandpa wrote that when this part gets clogged, the engine loses power just like what's happening with the stallion, Emma explained, showing her mother the page. Sophia struggled to read the note. Robert's handwriting was shaky. Even without fully understanding the technical details, she could tell her daughter had found something that might be important. "Are you going to show this to the mechanics tomorrow?" asked Sophia. "I'll try," replied Emma, but her voice held little hope of being taken seriously. The next morning, Emma arrived at the shop even earlier than usual. Her mother had suggested she get there before the mechanics so she could examine the stallion calmly and try to locate the part her grandfather had mentioned in his notes. The girl approached the red car with reverence. It was the first time she'd been so close to that impressive machine without any adults around. The engine was covered with a tarp, but Emma managed to lift part of it to take a look. Following the descriptions in her grandfather's book, she tried to locate the crankcase breather filter. It was a small part, usually positioned in a hard-to-reach spot, which explained why the mechanics might have overlooked it during their checks. When Mike and Dave arrived, they found Emma hunched over the stallion's engine with a small flashlight in her hand. Both were furious to see the girl tampering with the car without permission. "Emma, what are you doing?" shouted Mike, rushing toward the car. "Step away from that stallion right now." "I was just looking," Emma explained quickly, putting the flashlight away. "I thought I might have found the problem." "You found the problem?" Dave said sarcastically. "A 7-year-old found an issue 2 experienced mechanics couldn't solve in 3 weeks?" Mike shook his head, in irritation. "Emma, this has gone too far. I'll have to talk to your mother today. You can't keep messing with things here in the shop." "But I read in my grandfather's book about a part that—" Emma tried to explain. "Enough!" Mike cut her off. "We don't want to hear any more about your grandfather's books. This is a 2015 Italian stallion, not some old American car. The technologies are completely different." Emma felt like crying but managed to hold back her tears. She returned to her corner carrying her grandfather's book, determined not to give up, despite the adults' resistance. The mechanics resumed work under even more pressure. Richard from the dealership had called early to confirm he'd pick up the car at noon if the problem wasn't fixed. They had only 4 hours left to save their professional reputations. "Let's try replacing the entire electronic control unit," suggested Dave, desperate for any possible solution. "But the test showed it's working perfectly," argued Mike. "Doesn't matter. Maybe it's an intermittent issue the equipment can't detect." They spent 2 hours disassembling and replacing the control unit with a new one borrowed from another shop. When they finished the installation and tested the car, the problem remained exactly the same. "This can't be possible," muttered Dave, running his hands through his hair nervously. "We've replaced half the engine, and nothing's changed." Mike sat on the floor beside the stallion, visibly defeated. 20 years as a mechanic, and he'd never felt so incompetent. The sense of failure was devastating to his professional pride. With 1 hour left before Richard's arrival, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She waited for the mechanics to leave for lunch and approached the stallion again, this time determined to find the part her grandfather had mentioned once and for all. Using a small wrench she always carried with her, Emma carefully began removing some of the engine's smaller components to access the more hidden parts. She was following exactly the instructions Robert had written in his notes. After 15 minutes of meticulous work, she finally located the crankcase breather filter. It was a small, nearly invisible part, tucked away in a hard-to-reach spot, behind the engine block. When she managed to remove it, Emma discovered it was completely clogged with a dark, oily substance. "That's it," Emma exclaimed to herself, recalling her grandfather's exact words about how this part affected the engine's breathing. She carefully cleaned the filter using a clean cloth and some solvent she found in the shop. Then she reinstalled the part in the correct position and reassembled everything she had taken apart. When Mike and Dave returned from lunch, they found Emma sitting quietly in her corner, reading as if nothing had happened. They didn't even notice that some tools were slightly out of place from how they had left them. "Last try," Mike said, starting up the stallion for a final test before Richard arrived. To the two mechanics' complete surprise, the stallion's engine roared at full power for the first time in 3 weeks. The car accelerated perfectly, with no loss of power or irregular performance. "What happened?" Dave asked in disbelief, staring at Mike as if he'd performed some kind of magic. "I don't know," Mike replied, equally confused. "We didn't touch anything different from what we'd tried before. They tested the car several times, revving it at different RPMs, but the problem had completely vanished. The stallion was running as if it had just left the dealership." Emma watched everything from her corner with a faint smile on her face. She knew exactly what had happened, but decided not to say anything for now. The mechanics were so relieved by the solution that they didn't even question how the problem had been fixed. When Richard arrived at the shop at the scheduled time, he found Mike and Dave testing the stallion with expressions of relief and satisfaction. "Did you fix it?" Richard asked, clearly surprised. "Yes, the car's running perfectly," Mike replied, trying to hide his own astonishment. It was an issue with the engine's breathing system. Richard ran his own tests and confirmed that the stallion was indeed functioning normally. He congratulated the mechanics on their work and left the shop with a positive report to deliver to Mrs. Elizabeth. After Richard left, Mike and Dave began celebrating the solution. They still didn't fully understand what had happened, but they were too happy to worry about technical details at that moment. "Emma," Mike called, approaching the girl for the first time with a smile. "Thank you for not getting in the way today. You were a good girl." Emma simply smiled in response, but inside she felt a little sad. She had solved the problem that had been tormenting the mechanics, but they didn't even suspect that a 7-year-old had managed to do what they couldn't in 3 weeks. That afternoon, when Sophia arrived to pick up her daughter, Emma told her everything that had happened. She explained how she had found and cleaned the crankcase breather filter, just as her grandfather had taught her in his notes. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," Sophia said, hugging Emma with pride. "Even if they don't realize it now, you helped those men a lot." "But they still think I'm just a kid who gets in the way," Emma complained. "One day they'll find out the truth," Sophia reassured her. "And when they do, they'll be very proud to know a girl as smart and brave as you." In the following days, news of the stallion's repair spread quickly among the owners of imported cars in the area. Mike and Dave began receiving many new clients who had heard about their expertise in solving complex problems. The three brothers' workshop had never been so busy. Luxury cars arrived daily for maintenance and repairs, bringing a financial prosperity the two mechanics had never experienced before. Emma continued spending her days at the workshop during vacation, observing the work and studying her grandfather's books. She noticed Mike and Dave were more confident and cheerful, but still showed no interest in listening to her or valuing her knowledge. A week after the stallion incident, an even more challenging problem arrived at the workshop. A businessman named Anthony Brooks brought in his bullhorn force, which was making a strange noise in the engine, an intermittent metallic sound that only appeared at high RPMs. "I've already taken this car to 3 different shops," Anthony explained. "No one can figure out where the noise is coming from. I'm desperate because I'm afraid it might be something serious in the engine." Mike and Dave were excited by the new challenge. After their success with the stallion, they felt invincible and confident in their ability to solve any problem. For the first 2 days, they disassembled much of the bullhorn's engine, checking pistons, valves, the crankshaft, every moving part that could be causing the noise. But they found nothing out of the ordinary. "This noise is driving me crazy," Dave said, scratching his head nervously. "It comes and goes without any logical pattern." Emma was paying close attention to everything, especially the exact moment the noise appeared. She noticed the sound only occurred when the engine was hot and above 4,000 RPM. In her grandfather's notes, there was a description of a similar issue. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. On the 3rd day, Anthony returned to the workshop visibly impatient. He had paid a considerable amount for the diagnosis and expected a quick solution to his problem. "So, have you figured anything out?" Anthony asked with irritation in his voice. "We're investigating all possibilities," Mike replied diplomatically. "It's a more complex issue than we initially thought." "Complex?" Anthony raised his voice. Didn't you just solve a complicated problem with a stallion? I thought you were experts in Italian cars. The pressure was mounting again. Mike and Dave exchanged nervous glances, realizing they might be facing another professional failure that would ruin the reputation they had built the week before. Emma timidly approached the three men, holding her grandfather's book open to a specific page. "Oh, excuse me," she said softly. "I read here about a similar noise." "Emma," Mike cut her off sharply, "how many times have I told you not to interfere in our business?" Anthony looked at the girl curiously. "Who's this kid? Does she work here?" "She's the cleaning lady's daughter," Dave explained, somewhat embarrassed. "She stays here during vacation because there's nowhere else to leave her, but she doesn't know anything about mechanics." "Actually," Anthony said, smiling at Emma, "I'd love to hear what she has to say." Sometimes, kids notice things we adults miss. Mike and Dave were clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but couldn't contradict an important client. Emma felt a surge of courage, realizing someone was finally willing to listen to her. "My grandfather wrote here about a car that made the same noise," Emma explained, showing the page to Anthony. "He said it was a small bolt that comes loose inside the engine and hits the walls when the metal heats up and expands." Anthony read the note with genuine interest. Even though he wasn't a mechanic, he could follow the logic of the explanation. A loose object inside the engine could indeed cause an intermittent noise that would only appear under specific conditions. "That makes a lot of sense," said Anthony, looking at the mechanics. "Did you check if there's anything loose inside the engine?" Mike and Dave exchanged embarrassed glances. They had focused so much on looking for problems in the main components that they hadn't even considered the possibility of something small falling into the engine during a previous maintenance session. "We'll check that possibility," Mike said reluctantly. Over the next 2 hours, they disassembled the bullhorn cylinder head with much more care than before. After removing several parts, Dave found a small bolt at the bottom of the oil pan, exactly as Emma had suggested. "I can't believe it," Dave murmured, holding the bolt between his fingers. That was it, a bolt that must have fallen in during some earlier maintenance. When they reassembled the engine and tested it, the noise had completely disappeared. The bullhorn now ran perfectly silent, without any irregularities. Anthony was impressed, not just by the solution, but especially by the girl's sharp thinking. "Emma, you saved my car. How can I thank you?" "You don't have to thank me, sir," Emma replied shyly. "I just wanted to help." After Anthony left, Mike and Dave stood in silence for a long time. They were beginning to realize they had seriously underestimated the girl's intelligence and knowledge. "Emma," Mike finally said, in a tone much different from his usual. "1. Where did you learn all this about mechanics?" "From my grandpa Robert," she answered simply. "He always took me to his shop when I was little. I said I had a knack for understanding how machines work." Dave stepped closer and knelt in front of Emma, looking her straight in the eye. "I'm sorry for being rude to you before. I didn't know you really understood this stuff." "It's okay," Emma said, smiling. "Grandpa always said grown-ups sometimes forget kids can be smart too." In the days that followed, the mechanics' attitude toward Emma changed completely. They started including her in conversations about cars, asking for her opinion, and listening to her suggestions with genuine respect. The girl became an unofficial consultant at the three brothers' shop. Whenever an unusual problem came up, Mike and Dave would first consult the books from Grandpa Robert that Emma brought every day. The shop's reputation continued to grow rapidly. Customers came from different neighborhoods in New York City, drawn by stories of the mechanic's exceptional technical skills. What they didn't know was that much of that success came from the knowledge of a 7-year-old girl. 3 weeks. After the bullhorn incident, something happened that would test Emma's ability to solve complex problems once again. A situation arrived at the shop that none of Grandpa's books seemed to cover. Samantha Richardson, a successful executive, brought in her Falcon 911 with a very strange issue. The car ran perfectly during the day, but had serious problems at night. It was as if the vehicle had 2 different personalities depending on the time. "This is the weirdest thing I've ever seen," Samantha explained. "During the day, the car is perfect. But as soon as it gets dark, it starts choking, loses power, and sometimes even shuts off on its own. Mike, Dave, and Emma were intrigued by this unusual behavior. It was the kind of problem that completely defied standard automotive issues. "Have you taken it to any other shops?" asked Dave. "I've been to 5 different shops," replied Samantha, frustrated. "They all ran tests during the day and said there was nothing wrong with the car. But the problem only happens at night." Emma began thinking about what could cause such a specific difference between daytime and nighttime performance. She remembered some conversations she'd had with her grandfather about how different environmental conditions could affect engine performance. "Mrs. Richardson," Emma said hesitantly, "do you always drive the same route at night?" Samantha thought for a moment before answering. "Usually, yes. I leave work and go straight home. Always the same route along the Hudson Parkway." "And during the day, do you drive different places?" "Yes, I go to meetings all over the city. Why do you ask, dear?" Emma was starting to form a theory, but needed more information to be sure. "Does the problem always start at the same spot on the parkway, or can it happen anywhere along the way?" Samantha was surprised by the girl's sharp questions. "Now that you mention it, it always seems to start around the Queensboro Bridge. I never paid attention to that before." Mike and Dave were listening to the conversation with growing interest. They realized Emma was investigating the problem in a completely different way from the traditional technical approach. "Queensboro Bridge," Emma murmured, remembering something she'd read in one of her grandfather's books. "Mrs. Richardson, do you know if there's a river under that bridge?" "Yes, the East River runs under it," Samantha replied. "But what does that have to do with my car's problem?" Emma rushed to her corner and returned carrying one of her grandfather's oldest books. She quickly flipped to a chapter about problems caused by excessive humidity in the air. "Grandpa wrote here that when there's too much humidity, especially near rivers at night, some cars can have electrical issues," Emma explained, reading the notes. "The moisture gets into the wires and causes temporary short circuits." Mike stepped closer to read the page Emma was showing. Robert's notes were very detailed and included several specific cases of humidity-related problems. "That would explain why it only happens at night," Mike said, understanding the logic. "That's when the river's humidity gets more intense and concentrates around the bridge." "And during the day?" Dave asked. "During the day, the sun evaporates the moisture," Emma explained, "so the car runs fine. But at night, when the humidity returns, the problem comes back." Samantha was impressed by the girl's reasoning. "But then how do we fix it? I can't just stop crossing that bridge." "Grandpa wrote that the solution is to better protect the electrical wires," Emma said, continuing to read the notes. "You have to find where the moisture is getting in and seal it properly." For the next 2 hours, Mike and Dave inspected the entire electrical system of the Falcon, looking for spots where moisture could be seeping in. They found several poorly protected connections near the engine that could be vulnerable to outside humidity. After reinforcing the protection on all the identified wires and connections, they scheduled a nighttime test with Samantha. She would drive along the Hudson Parkway at the usual time the problem occurred to see if the solution had worked. Next night, Samantha returned to the shop with a bright smile on her face. "It worked perfectly. I drove over the bridge 3 times and the car had no issues." "It was Emma who figured out the cause," Mike said, giving the girl the credit she deserved. "We would have never thought about the river's humidity issue." Samantha looked at Emma with genuine admiration. "Sweetheart, you have a special gift. Have you ever considered studying engineering when you grow up?" "I want to be a mechanic like my grandpa," Emma replied simply. "He always said fixing cars is like caring for sick people. You have to pay attention to all the symptoms to figure out the real problem." From that moment on, Emma's reputation began to spread alongside the 3 brothers' garage's fame. Some clients came specifically to get the prodigy girl's opinion on complicated car issues. Mike and Dave realized they had something unique on their hands. They had found an unlikely partner who was taking the garage's service to levels they'd never imagined. "Emma," Dave said one day, "would you like to learn more about modern cars? We can teach you about electronic systems and technologies your grandpa might not have known." Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I'd love to learn everything. You can teach me." And so began an unusual partnership between two experienced mechanics and a 7-year-old girl who carried the wisdom of her grandpa's decades of experience. Together, they turned three brothers into a go-to place for imported car owners across the New York City metropolitan area. With every new challenge, Emma showed an impressive ability to connect old knowledge with modern problems. She had learned, from Robert, that the essence of mechanics remained the same no matter how much car technology evolved. 2 months after the first episode with the Stallion, the biggest challenge they'd ever faced arrived at the garage. Ryan Parker, a classic car collector, brought in 5 different vehicles at once, each with unique and seemingly unsolvable issues. "I heard you can fix problems no one else can," Ryan said. "I desperately need your help. I have an important exhibition in 6 weeks, and all these cars need to be in perfect working order." The 5 cars were a true showcase of automotive evolution. A 1987 Stallion Classic, a 1985 Bullhorn Classic, a 1986 Falcon 959, a 1995 Swift Race F1, and a 1993 Thunder 110. Each had specific issues that had frustrated multiple specialists. Mike and Dave were intimidated by the scale of the challenge. These were 5 rare and extremely valuable cars, each requiring very specific technical knowledge. The responsibility of working on such precious machines was daunting. Emma studied the 5 cars with fascination. She had never seen so many exotic cars in one place. Each had unique features that sparked her mechanical curiosity. "Where do we start?" Dave asked, clearly overwhelmed. "Let's take them one at a time," Mike suggested, starting with the problems that seemed simplest. They decided to begin with the Stallion Classic, which had an overheating issue. After 2 days of work, they found that the cooling system had been incorrectly modified by a previous mechanic, creating air pockets that prevented proper coolant flow. The second car was the Bullhorn Classic, which had transmission trouble. The gears wouldn't shift smoothly and made strange noises during changes. After a week of investigation, they found premature wear in the synchronizers, caused by the wrong type of oil. The Falcon 959 had intermittent issues with its all-wheel drive system. The car was functioning normally in rear-wheel drive, but when the AWD system was engaged, there was a loss of power and abnormal vibrations. The solution involved replacing several components of the central differential. The Swift Race F1 and the Thunder 110 remained, presenting the most complex and frustrating issues. The Swift Race had flaws in the engine management system that caused irregularities in acceleration. The Thunder simply refused to start, even though all systems appeared to be functioning normally. "We've been working on this for 4 weeks, said Mike, visibly exhausted. "The exhibition is in 2 weeks, and we still have 2 cars without a solution." Dave was equally discouraged. "We've tried everything we know. Maybe we should suggest Ryan look for specialists in Europe." Emma had been observing the work on all 5 cars very carefully. She took notes in a new notebook her mother had bought, recording every symptom and attempted solution she witnessed. "Can I take a look at the Swift Race?" Emma asked timidly. Mike and Dave exchanged glances. After all their past experiences, they had learned to value the girl's observations, but a Swift Race F1 was one of the most sophisticated cars ever built. "Emma, this car is worth over $2 million, Dave said hesitantly. "If something goes wrong..." "I just want to look," Emma insisted. "I won't touch anything without you knowing." They let Emma examine the Swift Race under close supervision. She carefully studied the central engine, paying special attention to the details that differed from conventional cars. After an hour of silent observation, Emma asked a question that surprised the mechanics. "Why does this car have 3 seats when all other sports cars have 2? "It's the Swift Race F1's signature design," Mike explained. "The driver sits in the center, and the passengers are on the sides. But doesn't that change the car's weight distribution?" Emma asked. Dave stopped working and looked at her with renewed interest. "It does. Why do you ask?" "Well, in Grandpa's book, there's a page about how weight affects engine performance," Emma said, showing the notebook where she had copied one of Robert's notes. "He wrote that when weight is distributed differently, the car's computer can get confused." Mike read the note Emma had copied. Robert had written about issues in race cars where changes in weight distribution affected the electronic management system's performance. "Do you think the Swift Race's computer is miscalculating because of the seat positions?" Mike asked. "Maybe," Emma replied. "If the computer was programmed for normal weight distribution, but the weight is actually different, it might be sending the wrong amount of fuel to the engine." It was an interesting theory neither mechanic had considered. They checked the management system's calibration and discovered there was indeed a discrepancy in the weight distribution parameters. After adjusting the programming to compensate for the unique central cockpit design, the Swift Race F1 started running perfectly. The acceleration irregularities vanished completely. "Once again, you've saved the day," Dave said, hugging Emma affectionately. "How do you spot these things we miss?" "Grandpa always said to pay attention to what's different," Emma explained. "When something isn't normal, that's usually where the problem is." Only the Thunder 110 remained, still refusing to start. It was the most frustrating issue of all, because there seemed to be nothing wrong with the car. All systems were testing normally, but the engine simply wouldn't start. "This Thunder is driving me crazy," said Mike, running his hands through his hair. "We've already checked the electrical system, fuel, ignition. Everything's perfect, but the car won't start no matter what." Emma approached the Thunder and studied it for a long time. It was completely different from any other car she'd ever seen. It had 4 turbos, all-wheel drive, and an extremely complex electronics management system. "How many cars like this exist in the world?" Emma asked. "Very few," replied Dave. "It was produced in limited quantities in the early 90s. It's one of the rarest cars out there." "And did the people who made this car know how to build cars before?" Mike was intrigued by the question. "Actually, no. Thunder was starting over after being inactive for a long time." "Why do you ask?" "Well, sometimes when you're learning, you make things more complicated than they need to be," said Emma, recalling something Robert always said. "Grandpa used to say engineers sometimes add extra systems that cause more problems than they solve." It was a profound observation that made Mike and Dave rethink their entire approach to the Thunder's issue. Instead of looking for defects in the systems, maybe they should investigate whether some system was working too well and preventing the car from starting. They spent the next day studying the Thunder's technical manual, searching for any protection or safety systems that might be blocking the engine from turning over. After hours of research, they discovered an extremely sensitive anti-theft system that had been incorrectly activated. The system was interpreting every attempt to start the car as a theft attempt and automatically blocking ignition. The solution involved a specific sequence of procedures to reset the security system. When they finally got the Thunder running, Ryan arrived at the shop for the final test. All 5 cars were ready 3 days ahead of the exhibition date. "I can't believe you pulled it off," said Ryan, visibly moved. 5 specialty import car shops said some of these problems were impossible to fix. "The truth is, we owe a lot of our success to Emma," Mike admitted honestly. "She sees things in a way we adults sometimes can't." Ryan looked at the girl with genuine respect. "Emma, if you'd like, you can come with me to the exhibition. I want everyone to meet the young mechanic who helped save my collection." Emma beamed at the invitation, but her joy was cut short by an unexpected problem. Sophia had arrived at the shop earlier than usual, her face lined with worry. "Emma, I have news that's going to change our lives," said Sophia. "I've landed a much better job in another city. We'll have to move upstate next week." Emma's heart sank. After finally finding her place at Three Brothers, discovering her passion for mechanics, and earning the adults' respect, she'd have to leave it all behind. "But Mom, I don't want to leave," Emma said, tears in her eyes. "I love working. It's on cars, and Mike and Dave are teaching me so many new things." Sophia knelt in front of her daughter, heartbroken at the sadness in her eyes. "Sweetheart, this new job will give us a much better life. We'll have our own house, and you'll get to attend a private school. It's an opportunity I can't pass up." Mike and Dave watched the conversation with growing sadness. Over the past few months, they'd grown accustomed, not just to Emma's presence, but especially to her invaluable contributions to the shop's work. "Sophia," said Mike hesitantly, "what if we offered you a job here? Emma has become a key part of our team. We don't want to lose her." "That's very kind of you," Sophia replied, "but this new job is at a big company with benefits and stability that you can't offer." The news spread quickly among the shop's customers. Many of them had developed a special fondness for Emma and were saddened to hear she might leave. Some even offered financial help to convince Sophia to stay. Samantha Richardson, the executive from Falcon, came up with an idea that could solve the situation. She arrived at the shop the next day with a surprising proposal. "Sophia, how about if I got you a job at my company?" Samantha offered. "We need someone competent to oversee office cleaning. The salary would match what you were offered in the other city, but you could keep living here." It was a tempting offer, but Sophia was still hesitant. "I don't know if it's fair to accept a job just because my daughter helped fix your car." "It's not just that," Samantha explained. "I need someone reliable and hard-working. And I can see you've raised an exceptional daughter, which says a lot about your character." While Sophia considered Samantha's offer, others were planning a surprise for Emma. Ryan Parker had spoken with several shop customers, and together they decided to create something special to recognize the girl's talents. On Friday, the day before the possible move, the Three Brothers shop was packed. Every customer Emma had helped over the past few months came to say goodbye and thank her. "Emma," said Anthony Brooks, the owner of the Bullhorn, "we want you to know how much we value your intelligence and dedication. That's why we prepared a surprise." They revealed a complete set of professional tools, specially sized for Emma's hands. Each tool was engraved with her name, and there was also a custom jumpsuit with Emma Johnson, expert mechanic, embroidered on the chest. This is for you to keep learning and growing wherever you go," Ryan explained. "You have a special talent that should be nurtured." Emma was too emotional to speak. She hugged each person there, thanking them for their kindness and recognition. Sophia watched with tears in her eyes. She realized her daughter had found far more than just a hobby at Three Brothers. Emma had discovered her calling, built meaningful friendships, and gained an extended family that truly cared for her. "Samantha," Sophia finally said, "I accept your job offer. I can't take my daughter away from a place where she's so happy and valued." The celebration that followed was heartwarming. Mike and Dave hugged Emma with relief and joy, promising to keep teaching her everything they could about modern mechanics. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Ryan's classic car show was a huge success. Emma attended as a special guest, wearing her new jumpsuit and carrying her custom tool set. Many people were impressed to meet the young mechanic who had helped restore such valuable cars. During the show, a journalist from Wheels and Engines magazine interviewed Emma about her passion for mechanics. The article was published the following month under the title, "The Little Prodigy of Mechanics," telling the story of how a 7-year-old girl was revolutionizing a shop in New York City. The publication of the article brought even more recognition for Emma and the Three Brothers garage. Customers began arriving from other cities, curious to meet the girl who could solve problems even specialists couldn't identify. With the increase in clientele, Mike and Dave decided to expand the shop. They hired 2 more mechanics and bought more modern equipment. Emma got her own workspace with tools adapted to her size and a workbench at the perfect height. The partnership between Emma and the mechanics continued to grow. She learned about modern technologies while sharing the classic knowledge she had inherited from her grandfather Robert. It was an enriching exchange that benefited everyone involved. 6 months after the Stallion incident, the Three Brothers garage was recognized as one of the best in New York City for imported cars. The combination of the adult mechanics experience and Emma's unique perspective created a level of service unmatched anywhere else. "Emma," Mike said one day, "have you ever thought about studying engineering when you grow up? With your talent, you could design amazing cars." "I'd rather fix cars than design them," Emma replied. "I like helping people when they have problems, just like Grandpa used to do." The wisdom of her answer impressed Mike. Even at such a young age, Emma already understood that her true passion wasn't just about mechanics. It was about using her knowledge to help others. Emma's story spread beyond New York City. She received invitations to speak at schools and automotive events, always accompanied by Mike or Dave. Her message was simple but powerful. Age doesn't determine ability, and knowledge can come from anywhere. During one of these talks, Emma met Amanda Wilson, an engineer at American Motors who was fascinated by the girl's story. Amanda offered a mentorship program that would allow Emma to visit development labs and explore the most advanced aspects of the automotive industry. "What would you most like to learn?" Amanda asked during their first visit to the research center. "I want to understand how the cars of the future will work," Emma answered enthusiastically. "But I also want them to stay cars that people like my grandpa could still understand." It was a mature and balanced perspective that impressed all the engineers present. Emma wasn't just interested in technology for its own sake. She cared about how innovation could improve people's lives without unnecessarily complicating things. The first year of partnership between Emma, Mike, and Dave was marked by countless successes. They fixed problems in over 200 different cars, from classic models to the most modern supercars. Each case was an opportunity for learning and growth. The garage's reputation reached the ears of William Harrison, a businessman who collected rare cars from around the world. He arrived with a challenge that would test all the knowledge Emma had gained in her first year as a mechanic. "I have a Skyhawk Supreme that no one in the United States can fix," William explained. "It's an extremely rare Swedish car with technology few mechanics understand. I've tried 5 different shops with no luck." The Skyhawk was unlike any car they had ever seen. It had a twin-turbo V8 engine with over 1,000 horsepower and electronic systems so advanced they seemed like science fiction. "The problem is it starts normally, but after a few minutes of running it just shuts off and won't start again," William said. "It's like there's some protection system I can't figure out." Mike and Dave were intimidated by the car's complexity. It was a level of technology far beyond anything they had ever seen. Emma, on the other hand, was fascinated by the opportunity to learn about such an advanced vehicle. "Can I study this car's manual?" Emma asked. William smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. "Of course, but it's all in English and Swedish. It'll be hard to understand." "I can manage," Emma said confidently. "And if I don't understand something, I can ask Amanda. She knows several languages." Over the next 3 days, Emma immersed herself in studying the Skyhawk with impressive dedication. She translated entire pages of the manual, diagrammed the most complex systems, and noted every detail she found important. Amanda Wilson came to the shop to help Emma grasp some of the more advanced concepts. Together, they mapped out the car's entire operation, from basic mechanical aspects to the most sophisticated electronic systems. "This car has safety features I've never seen before," Amanda said, amazed by the complexity. "The Swedish engineers really thought of everything." "But sometimes overthinking can be a problem," Emma observed, recalling the thunder incident. "Maybe one of the safety features is activating when it shouldn't." It was a sharp observation that redirected their entire investigation. Instead of looking for defects, they began examining which safety systems might be triggering incorrectly. After 2 days of detailed analysis, Emma discovered the car had an extremely sensitive fuel temperature sensor. If the temperature rose just 2 degrees above normal, the system interpreted it as a fire risk and automatically shut off the engine. "The problem is, this sensor is calibrated for Sweden's climate," Emma explained. "It's much colder there than here in the US, so even at a normal temperature for us, the sensor thinks it's too hot." The solution involved recalibrating the sensor for American weather conditions, keeping all safety functions intact, but adapting them to the local environment. After the adjustment, the Skyhawk ran perfectly, even under New York City's intense heat. William was so impressed with the solution that he offered to take Emma to visit the Skyhawk factory in Sweden. The engineers there would love to meet the girl who found a flaw they hadn't considered. "Thank you, Mr. William," Emma replied politely, "but I'd rather stay here learning from the cars that come into our shop. Each one is different and teaches me something new." The maturity of her answer surprised everyone. Emma wasn't interested in fame or international recognition. Her genuine passion lay in solving problems and helping people, no matter where it happened. The second year at Three Brothers brought new challenges and opportunities. Emma, now 8 years old, had built a reputation that attracted increasingly complex and interesting cases. One of the most memorable involved Elizabeth Carter, a famous pianist who owned a Royal Elite with a very peculiar issue. The car ran perfectly, most of the time, but always malfunctioned when Elizabeth was on her way to important performances. "It's like the car knows when I'm nervous," Elizabeth explained in frustration. "When I'm going to rehearsals or casual outings, it never has problems. But when I need to get to a concert, something always goes wrong." The pattern was so specific it seemed more psychological than mechanical. Mike and Dave were baffled, but Emma began forming an interesting theory. "Mrs. Elizabeth," Emma asked, "when you go to concerts, do you do anything differently with the car?" Elizabeth thought for a moment. "Well, when I go to perform, I always keep my violin on the back seat. It's a very valuable instrument, so I drive more carefully." "Drive more carefully? How?" insisted Emma. "I accelerate slower, take turns more smoothly, brake more gradually. Any sudden movement could damage the violin." Emma exchanged a meaningful glance with Mike. She was starting to understand what might be happening. "Does your car have electronic systems that learn from your driving habits?" asked Emma. "Yes, it has several adaptive driving modes," confirmed Jennifer. "That's it," exclaimed Emma. "When you change your driving because of the violin, the car's computer gets confused because it isn't expecting this different behavior." It was a brilliant theory that connected human psychology with electronic behavior. The Royals management system was programmed to adapt to Jennifer's driving style, but when she drastically changed her behavior, the computer interpreted it as a possible mechanical issue. The solution involved creating a custom driving mode specifically for when Jennifer transported musical instruments. That way, the electronic system would know exactly what to expect and wouldn't interpret cautious driving as an anomaly. "Emma, you're a genius," said Jennifer, hugging the girl after the successful test. "You solved a problem that's been bothering me for months." Cases like this became the specialty of the Three Brothers garage, complex issues that involved not just technical aspects, but also human behavior and specific circumstances other mechanics didn't consider. Emma's holistic approach, influenced by her grandfather Robert's teachings, was revolutionizing how automotive problems were diagnosed and solved. She didn't see cars just as machines, but as extensions of their owners. During the third year, when Emma turned 9, the biggest challenge of her career as a mechanic arrived. Richard Montgomery, a millionaire businessman, showed up at the garage with a proposal that would test all the knowledge and skills she had developed. "I have a collection of 15 unique cars," explained Richard. "Each one has specific problems no garage has been able to fix. If you can repair all of them, I'll pay $1 million for the service." It was an astronomical sum that would completely change the lives of everyone at the garage. Mike and Dave were tempted, but also worried about the magnitude of the challenge. 15 different cars, each with unique issues, continued Richard. Some are prototypes that were never commercially sold. Others are custom modifications that exist nowhere else in the world. "I'm sure this will be the ultimate test for the famous little mechanic." Emma felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was a chance to work with truly unique cars, but also the pressure of handling problems that might be beyond her abilities. "How much time do we have?" asked Emma. 6 months, replied Richard. "If you can fix at least 12 of the 15 issues, I'll consider the job satisfactory." It was a tight deadline for such a complex task, but Emma was determined to take on the challenge. Over the previous years, she had learned that every seemingly impossible problem was actually an opportunity to discover something new. The 15 cars arrived at the garage on a special trailer, each covered with a custom tarp. When they were unveiled, they formed an impressive collection representing decades of automotive innovation. There was a Swift Race F1 Special, one of only 5 ever produced, a modified Stallion Supreme tuned for track use, a Bullhorn Stealth with an experimental hybrid system, a Thunder Ultimate Plus with aerodynamic issues, and 11 other equally rare and complex cars. "Where do we start?" asked Dave, clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task. "Let's study each problem individually first," suggested Emma. "Then we can see if there's any connection between them." For the first 2 weeks, Emma, Mike, and Dave meticulously documented every issue. Some were traditional mechanical problems, others involved advanced electronics, and a few seemed related to poorly executed custom modifications. The Swift Race F1 Special overheated only at high speeds. The Stallion Supreme intermittently lost power. The hybrid Bullhorn had synchronization issues between the combustion engine and the electric motor. Each car was a unique puzzle requiring completely different approaches. Emma decided to apply a strategy she'd learned from her grandfather, Robert. Start with the simplest problems to build confidence and momentum before tackling the more complex challenges. The first success came with a Falcon Lightning that had navigation system failures. Emma discovered the issue was caused by electromagnetic interference from an unauthorized sound system modification. After removing the modification and reinstalling the original system, the GPS worked perfectly again. The second case solved was a royal fire with grip issues in corners. Emma noticed the special tires had been mounted at the wrong pressure for the car's specific weight. After adjusting the pressure to the manufacturer's specifications, the handling improved dramatically. Each victory gave the team more confidence and confirmed that even the most complex problems could be solved with patience, careful observation, and the correct application of fundamental principles. The third month brought the biggest challenges. The Thunder Ultimate Plus had aerodynamic instability at high speed, a potentially dangerous issue that would be hard to diagnose without specialized equipment. Emma spent weeks studying aerodynamics, consulting Amanda Wilson and other experts to understand how air behaved around high-speed cars. She discovered that a modification to the rear spoiler had subtly but significantly altered the airflow. The solution involved restoring the spoiler to its original configuration and making specific adjustments to other aerodynamic elements to compensate for irreversible modifications. After days of fine-tuning, the Thunder was stable at any speed. Again, the most challenging case of all was the hybrid Bullhorn Stealth. It was a one-of-a-kind prototype, combining Bullhorn's traditional V12 engine with an experimental electric system. The problem was that the two systems couldn't work together harmoniously. Emma spent weeks studying hybrid systems, learning about energy management, high-performance batteries, and complex electronic integration. It was cutting-edge technology, but she was determined to find a solution. The answer came from an unexpected source. While flipping through her grandfather Robert's books, Emma found notes about cars with two different engines working together. Robert had written about how important it was for both engines to breathe at the same rhythm. Applying this concept to the hybrid Bullhorn, Emma realized the issue lay in the synchronization between the systems. The electric motor was trying to deliver power at different times than the combustion engine, creating conflict instead of collaboration. After adjusting the programming so both systems worked in perfect sync, the Bullhorn Stealth became an incredibly powerful and efficient machine. It was like two musicians who had been playing out of rhythm finally found perfect harmony. By the end of the 5th month, only 2 cars remained unresolved: a Skyhawk 1 with cooling issues and a Swift Race Champion with faulty carbon ceramic brakes. Both were extremely complex and presented problems that seemed beyond the capabilities of any conventional workshop. The Skyhawk 1 would overheat even under normal driving conditions. Emma and the team checked the entire cooling system, replaced components, tested different coolant fluids, but nothing solved the underlying issue. "Maybe this car just can't handle the US climate," Mike suggested after weeks of failed attempts. "Don't give up yet," Emma said, recalling the first case she'd solved at the shop. "There's always a solution. We just need to find where the real problem is." She decided to approach the issue from a completely different angle. Instead of focusing on the cooling system, Emma began investigating whether something was generating excess heat in the engine. After detailed analysis, she discovered the injection system was delivering too much fuel at low RPMs. The excess fuel wasn't burning efficiently, creating unnecessary heat that overwhelmed the cooling system. The solution involved completely recalibrating the injection system for US conditions. After the adjustments, the Skyhawk 1 ran perfectly even on the hottest days in New York City. Only the Swift Race champion with its brake issues remained. It was the final challenge, and possibly the most dangerous. Faulty brakes weren't just a performance issue, but a basic safety concern. The problem was that the carbon ceramic brakes would intermittently lose efficiency. Sometimes they worked perfectly, other times they barely stopped the car. It was unpredictable behavior that made the vehicle dangerous to drive. Emma spent days studying ceramic brake technology, consulting experts and manufacturers. It was a very different system from conventional brakes, performing best when hot, but with specific heating and cooling characteristics. The breakthrough came when Emma noticed the issue only occurred after periods of intermittent use. If the car was driven consistently, the brakes worked fine, but if used sporadically, they lost efficiency. "It's just like my grandmother's oven," Emma said in one of those observations that surprised with their simplicity and accuracy. When she bakes a cake, the oven works better once it's already warm, but if she tries to use it cold, sometimes the cake doesn't bake right. The analogy led to the solution. The ceramic brake system needed a specific warm-up period to reach its ideal operating temperature. The problem was that this warm-up wasn't happening correctly. Emma programmed an automatic preheating sequence that prepared the brakes every time the car was started. This way, they'd always be at the right temperature when needed. When Richard Montgomery arrived for the final evaluation, all 15 cars were running flawlessly. It was an impressive feat that demonstrated not just technical skill, but exceptional determination and creativity. "I can't believe you actually did it," Richard said, testing each car himself. "Some of these problems have been haunting me for years." How did a 9-year-old girl manage to solve things that international experts couldn't? "Emma sees things differently," Mike explained proudly. "She combines old knowledge with modern technology in a way no one else does." Richard Montgomery kept his promise and paid the full amount for the services. It was a sum that would allow Mike and Dave to significantly expand the shop and secure Emma's educational future. "What are you going to do with all that money?" Richard asked. "We're investing in a specialized technical school," Dave replied. "We want to teach other young people to solve problems the way Emma does. The world needs more mechanics who think outside the box." The idea for the technical school became a reality the following year. The Robert Johnson School of Mechanics, honoring Emma's grandfather, opened in a new building next to the three brothers' shop. Emma, now 10, became the first student and also a kind of teaching assistant. She helped other young people develop the same passion for mechanics that she had discovered as a child. The most important thing isn't memorizing how things work. Emma taught the new students. It's understanding why they work. When you understand the why, you can solve any problem, even if you've never seen it before. It was a philosophy she had inherited from her grandfather, Robert, and was now passing on to a new generation of mechanics. The wisdom was being carried forward, ensuring it wouldn't be lost with time. Emma's story spread beyond New York City. She received invitations to appear on TV shows, write books, and even consult for car manufacturers. But she always declined these opportunities, preferring to focus on local work. "I don't want to be famous," Emma would explain whenever asked about these offers. "I want to be useful, and I can be most useful here, helping people in my community and teaching other young people." By 12, Emma had become a local legend. The Three Brothers Shop and the Robert Johnson School of Mechanics were considered reference institutions, not just in New York City, but across the United States. But perhaps Emma's greatest legacy wasn't her technical skill or her ability to solve impossible problems. It was her proof that age, social background, or circumstances don't determine a person's potential. She had shown that a girl from a humble family, armed only with curiosity, determination, and the teachings of a loving grandfather, could earn the respect of experts, revolutionize a profession, and inspire an entire generation of young people. "Grandpa always said everyone has a special talent," Emma reflected in an interview with the local paper. "The important thing is to discover what that talent is and use it to help others. I was lucky to find mine early, but I believe everyone can find their calling if they have support and opportunity." The Three Brothers Shop continued to thrive under the partnership of Emma, Mike, and Dave. They had created something unique, a place where traditional knowledge and modern innovation came together to solve seemingly impossible problems. More importantly, they had built a chosen family that transcended differences in age, background, and origin. United by their shared passion for mechanics and their desire to help people, they proved that the strongest bonds are those built on mutual respect and shared goals. The little girl who had once been ridiculed for her age had grown into living proof that wisdom has no age, skill has no gender, and sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. When Emma turned 15, the three brothers' garage celebrated a decade of extraordinary partnership. During that time, they had solved over 1,000 different cases, taught hundreds of young mechanics, and built a reputation that stretched across the country. "Do you know what the most important case we ever solved was?" Mike asked during the birthday celebration. "The Red Stallion?" Dave suggested. "No," Emma replied with a smile. "The most important case was when you all decided to listen to a 7-year-old girl. That changed everything for all of us." It was a profound observation that perfectly summed up the extraordinary journey they had shared. Everything had started with a stallion no one could fix and a little girl who just wanted to help. Over the years, they had learned that mechanics was about much more than just repairing cars. It was about solving problems, helping people, and using knowledge and creativity to make a difference in others' lives. Sophia watched the celebration with tears of pride in her eyes. Her decision to stay in New York City had proven right in every possible way. Emma had not only found her calling, but also an extended family who valued and supported her unconditionally. "Mom," Emma said, hugging Sophia, "thank you for believing in me when I was just a kid saying I could fix cars." "Sweetheart, I always knew you were special," Sophia replied. "Your grandfather knew it too. He'd be so proud to see what you've become." The Three Brothers Garage and the Robert Johnson School of Mechanics continued to operate and grow, serving as proof that knowledge, passion, and determination could overcome any obstacle. And it had all started with a 7-year-old girl who refused to give up, even when everyone laughed at her age and underestimated her ability. The Red Stallion that had begun this journey still visited the garage regularly for maintenance. Mrs. Elizabeth always insisted that Emma personally take care of her car, in recognition of the young mechanic's exceptional talent, the one who had solved a problem no one else could identify. And whenever a new customer doubted whether a young woman could understand complex cars, Mike and Dave would tell the story of how it all began, with laughter, skepticism, and a determined little girl who proved that skill knows no age. Emma continued working at the garage throughout her teenage years, balancing school with her passion for mechanics. She knew she still had much to learn, but was also confident she had much to teach. Her greatest pride wasn't the expensive cars she'd fixed or the recognition she'd received. It was seeing young students from the Robert Johnson School of Mechanics begin their own careers as skilled and ethical mechanics, carrying forward the values of curiosity, persistence, and dedication to others. The small wrench Emma had received from her grandfather at 6 still went with her every day. Now she had far more sophisticated tools, but she always carried the original as a reminder of where it all began. Robert Johnson would have been proud to know his teachings not only lived on through his granddaughter, but were being passed down to hundreds of other young people, learning that mechanics was a noble, essential profession full of opportunities for those willing to work hard and never stop learning. The story of the girl who fixed the stallion no one else could became legend in New York City's automotive community. But for those who knew Emma personally, the real lesson of her journey wasn't about cars or mechanics. It was about the importance of believing in every child's potential, valuing knowledge regardless of its source, and never underestimating what can be achieved when determination meets opportunity. And so the Three Brothers Garage remained a place where impossible problems found creative solutions, where young talents were nurtured with care, and where a girl who had once been mocked for her age became living proof that wisdom sometimes resides in the most unexpected places. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you think Emma made the right choice by accepting the challenges? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like this video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.